Good evening, good morning, good whatever, wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, etc. You're on the bongversations number. Let me think. It's number
13.
13. Yes,
13.
number which is 13, episode 13, which is number 4 in the series. Well, another
Yeah.
series. We've kind of gone. We've moved on. We're in the movie, the illusion era of the movies, where
Well, that ties in
what you,
too to the 4, right? Doesn't it? Just another door, just another way in to look at the same
exactly,
thing. Because it's really just going to
exactly.
wind up being the same thing. But go ahead, continue.
Well, on this, it's the November the 3rd, which is 11/3 for me, and it's probably 2/11 for
Two, 11
Dave
2
J.
2
11
11
2,
2
11 2.
2024. Yeah, here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So let's just go, man. That's Dave. You
Yeah.
blind us with your light, and show us
Well,
some. Tell us. Tell us.
I was thinking about going to. Well, I was telling you earlier. We were just kind of talking about the Malibu Creek State Park. Malibu Creek State Park. That is in California. That is Southern
Mm-hmm.
California, just outside of a place I used to. The closest little town is Calabasas. By the by road, but it's very close to Agora Hills, which is where I grew up. And my mother particularly would take me there, and we'd walk around the different sets. At the time, there was the Planet of the Apes set. So
Bet.
where they had the scene with the damn dirty apes. Get your hands off me, you damn dirty apes!
38. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that scene.
Charlton Heston.
Yeah,
Charlton
Charlton
Heston.
Heston in the first one, and
Yep.
and he was in the second one, but reluctantly. And I'll get to there in a minute. But
Okay.
so that scene was filmed right there. I walked around there in my Levi's jacket, being cool, and I thought I was the cat's meow, man. I'm walking around there looking cool, and I even walked up the steps, where they had like the little the gorilla was having the speech about conquest, or
Yes.
invasion. So I sat on those steps as well. Yeah, so I did the whole
Fantastic.
little. I looked all around there. So then, just to close the loop on that deal, Charlton Heston was actually he didn't want to be part of another remake.
8 movie.
So then he kind of, once he saw that it was going to go anyway without him, because he wasn't as powerful as he thought he was, that the movie was going to be made anyway, and it was with what's his nuts, the second guy,
Roddy McDowell
as Brent. No, James Franciscus.
James Franciscus.
As Brent.
Yes.
Remember, it was in the second movie, the second pilot that landed, and and they had like 2 or 3 minutes of the skipper, Todd Andrews, where it was just a complete waste of time, where he's just laying there blind, being worthless, and just complaining that, oh, my wife's been dead for 200 years, and then he just croaks. I was like, that's 3 minutes, 3 minutes that they could have saved. That scene didn't even have to happen. Just cut him out completely. So anyways, yeah, so then Brent, so the reason that Heston, once he saw that it was going to be made anyway, and that a lot of the same characters like Nova came back, and she was the eye candy for the whole thing anyway. The
lovely
girl.
little outfit she was
wearing. Linda Harrison, yeah. So she was the eye candy for the whole thing, and Nova being a new beginning idea. And then, of course, you have so as the story as he said, once he saw the commercial impact of the first one, he was first saying that he didn't want it to be ruined, but he saw it was going to go on anyway. So then he became part of it. Towards at the end, you see him in the fighting scene in the cage when they're forced to fight each other through mental telepathy. That whole scene, and every scene he's in is in a very tight set. So it was only he was not like the main character, where he was all over the place. He was in the Malibu Creek State Park. He was in Utah. He was in Arizona. He was in all those other places filming. So then Charlton just kind of came at the end, and just to be part of it. but then
And probably
you were
paid a
right.
large chunk, probably paid a large amount of money to appear
Oh
in it as
yeah.
well.
And McDowell is the one who became really the character that ran through all of them. All
Yeah,
really, all yeah.
and the
McDowell.
TV show eventually. Yeah,
Yeah,
Roddy
yeah,
McDowell.
yeah. So he knew a cash cow when he saw it for sure, man.
Yeah.
So then that's one of the sets, and then I was also on the MASH set. Uh, I ran up and
Wow.
down, where they had the helicopter landed and things like that. I was all
Yeah.
running up and down there. I used to be a track star, so I was running up there like as fast as I could, like they do at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
With that same Levi's jacket. I was thinking
Well,
I'm
you should
cool.
have had or a Hawaiian shirt
Yeah, I was like,
like
yeah, and
Hawkeye.
I was like, yeah. Oh yeah, at the beginning there with the Hawaiian shirts and in the movie specifically, and then they brought it back in the once in a while in the show as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they were
Yep.
knocking golf balls.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yep. So yeah,
Great
I was
show
up,
too.
up on
Great
top
show.
of there. Yeah, and then they left all the tents up. If you got there before they broke it down for the season, the tents would still be up. The
Really?
where radar and the hospital was, that kind of steel building, that was always there, no matter what.
Mm.
That was
And
always
Dave,
that was
and
yeah,
Dave, you,
yeah,
you, you, you of course know the 4077th. What
yeah.
does that add up to?
Mhm.
There's a number there. The 18, the number 9, number 9, number
So
9, number 9.
yeah, so I was, and then the guy, and then so with the with those the Planet of the Apes, I did the MASH. Oh, and Logan's Run was also filmed out there, and that's kind of where I'd like to go ahead and start with Logan's Run.
Go for
Is
it, man. I love that TV show and the movie. Big fan. Mm,
Yeah, so if you remember, Logan went by he was a Sandman, right?
that's right.
Yeah. So now, if you know the idea of a Sandman is one who is gonna cause a dream or cause someone to dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the idea of the Sandman also is to put one to sleep. So then there there's a DC comic called the Sandman, and
Yeah.
within the universe there's Cain and Abel are characters. So you see how this ties into this idea. It always ties back to the biblical ideas. So
Yeah.
then Logan is he calls himself Logan 5, right? That's his identity. And then his buddy is Francis 7.
Yeah.
The guy, he's a real fruitcake. Remember how he's always trying to play grab ass with him at the beginning?
Yeah.
He's like, you think he's a little 7. Obviously, I don't need to repeat the 7, right? 7,
No.
7, 7, 7. So then that's
Yeah.
the idea. So then he is, if you recall, he's the character that's chasing him the entire time, even to the end. Even to the end,
Yes.
his mind was
Yeah.
not changed, even to the end. So
Yeah.
he was that splinter that was never going to go away. So then, just to get kind of to the end of that movie, because a lot of it is, if you notice at the, I did want to kind of get to the point of it. I guess is like what was the key? What was the key used in the movie? It was the shape or the ankh, the medallion called the ankh, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So now, if you can picture the ankh in your eye, uh, that is nothing more than the idea of the Egyptian goddess of Nut reflected. Nut is the one who overarcs over the so-called universe and creates a kind of uh, a carpet above
Mm-hmm.
her with her arms outstretched.
Yep.
Also, Nut in the Jewish gematria is 340, which is 7, but also equals the image of Satan. It also in English, wait for this, equals 666.
Well,
All
there you go.
right. And in simple, it equals 111 or 3, which you know is the ring or the false ring, or the G, which is in Masonic art. You see the G. And then the
Everywhere.
3 is the G, is the 7. because in the Phoenician writing, the Phoenician is the idea of the merchant. It is the idea of the modern day kind of Hollywood Jew. All right, that the Jew that calls themselves Jews but are not. That kind of biblical revelation idea. All right. So the interloper. All right. So then these are the image of Satan, Satan. So these characters are putting into these movies these ideas, and they are all going to be from the Kabbalah or Kabbalistic ideas, because they are all what's called Kabbalistic Jews or Ashkenazi Jews. Notice that with the Phoenician, which is that idea, it's important that if you look at the third letter of Phoenician, it represents what looks like the 7. I've told you that before. It looks like the 7, or the 7th letter in English is the G. Now, remember, I've told you before that if you're going to deal with like the language we're using together, you and I are speaking together, we're speaking English. So then when we communicate together, I'm going to break it down into English for you. So then the nut in simple gematria, just using the N is 14, the U is the 21st letter, and the T is the 20th, you get 55. That's the balance, the 5, 5, the 10. With you balance, your 5 senses are balanced, then you're in balance with yourself. So you see that what the nut represents is the idea of balance. Boom, you have it. So Logan's run is running to find balance, right? Isn't that what his story is? There's something missing, so they're going to chase it. And then the key that's used is the Ankh. Now, this Ankh, as I've just demonstrated, is the nut, is the senses that went. Guess what happens when they first, before they can even use it, they get tempted. What's that last room temptation? And this was kind of interesting as a kid. This was a PG movie, so you got to get in to see this.
Jenny Agatha.
Yeah, so you get through this first door, and it's basically the last temptation scene. It's a bunch of naked people trying to grab at you. And it's freaking, it's that last final temptation. And then you get through a door, and then you're able to use this key. Now the key is not used, and most people won't get past that room of temptation. It's too much for most. And remember, I told you that if you're dealing with the idea of particularly shrooms and whatnot, you'll come to a veil, what looks very similar. And this is, I don't think I've told you this before. It looks very similar to a stained glass window. You've got to walk past that as if it's not there. And what I find interesting with cathedrals and churches is that the stained glass is not to keep anything out, but to keep people in, keep their spirit in. It's to keep it inside that capsule and just listen to that voice that's droning on, endlessly about nonsense. Right? Do you kind of get the drift? So unless you get past that veil, and in the case of Logan's Run, if the characters didn't get past that room, which is earthly temptations, like the absolute all fleshly lust, if you got past that, then you actually got the chance to move out. But do you remember that even that was a hoax, because the robot character would then try and freeze you?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like you had to. It's like just when you thought you got out, you didn't get out. Then the next thing's trying to get you, and then finally, what happens is they then go and they enter the sun, or they see the sun. That goes back to the book of Adam and Eve. That goes back to that biblical story of the idea of the day being created for Adam and Eve, and then when the first time that Adam sees the sun, he starts wigging out.
Yeah.
If you need to, just read the story if people need to see it. He wigs out.
Well, it's very similar to the fact that it's a
Yeah.
male and female going through these temptations. It's very similar to an Adam and Eve story anyway.
Right.
Logan, Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very good, Rick. Yeah, so just riff on anything you want to riff on, man.
Oh man, well no, I saw the movie. Yeah, you're right. If it was PG, I would have been 74, 75, 76, I guess it came out. And yeah, there was plenty of bodies. You know, you got to
Oh
see
yeah, it came out in
Jenny.
76.
76. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll be old enough to see it at 76, and
Oh
getting
yeah.
to that age, I was 12, I guess, and seeing Jenny Agata and her body again, and all the there was a lot of nudity in a movie that was very PG for sure. A fascinating movie though about. So you had all the pleasures of everything given to you, but you had to at 30 you were
At
gone. You
30,
were
you
terminated.
croaked. Yeah.
You
You
croaked,
went.
yeah, and
Yeah, you went into the carousel,
yeah,
and then
carousel, yeah.
you got lifted up, and then it was supposed to be that you were then reborn and whatnot.
Well, you floated around into the
Yeah,
sky, and it was
and then
yeah,
popped.
and pop, 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 pop,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and then yeah. So there was a bit of it was a great life up until you were 30, and then forget about it. But that's the number three. So obviously there was this beginning of the, as
I
you're saying, the count.
and I found this interesting is that when you look at the time frame of, and I'm just looking at movies that were kind of filmed in the same area or use that same creek bed, because they would have used Malibu Creek State Park when they were, after they had gotten out and they saw the sun, and then they were walking in the creek bed with all those kind of rocks, those
Yeah,
round rocks. That's the creek bed. That's kind of the look that's of that particular area.
it's
So that's,
incredible how much
yeah.
the location, how much it's been used for these very important movies and TV shows.
Yes.
They've obviously
So
they picked the right location. Yeah,
oh yeah, yeah, but well, like I say, every time you go around a corner, because it kind of runs in an odd direction. It's in a cleft of the mountains, and the ocean's on the other side, so it has
yeah.
a very unique environment, and so
Mm,
it kind of it gives a very interesting. Every time you turn around through one of the little crevices, it changes. So then, if you look at the Planet of the Apes, they land in 2673. All right. And then the year of Logan's run is 2274. So I'm then, if you're looking at it, if we were going to go ahead and build a timeline or build fan fiction, Logan's run would be the civilization that's about to be built after the second destruction of mankind. Because
wow.
if you,
Okay.
yeah, because if you look at Logan's Run, they already were building upon a broken society. Because if you
That's right.
remember, they ran into the character in the so-called Capitol building, and that obvious Satan character, the old man,
Yeah.
who, yeah, obvious Satan character. Because, and what the reason I say that is because he started to, locks became, if the playing with hair, like the idea of a character playing with one's hair, is the idea of playing with a lock of hair.
Lock of hair. Yeah.
Yeah, so now a lock is the idea of being locked into the idea. So what happened was is they brought the old man all the way back to this so-called, dystopian place where there was no issue, at least that if you're looking at it, other than the whole 30 years thing. Oh,
Mm.
before I can forget this, remember in their hand they had a crystal, and then at the 30 years it becomes like a red or a ruby
It glow.
color.
Yeah. It started. That's right. It started
Yeah.
glowing.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just remember that, just kind of keep the ruby color in mind, because that's going to become important when I tell you about kind of some stuff in the Planet of the Apes as well. All right.
Excellent.
Oh yeah.
No
So
one's done
then,
any of this, but this is
yeah.
all. I've listened to all this stuff. No one's
Yeah.
broken these shows down like what's being broken down here now. Guaranteed.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah,
Mm.
all amateurs. They're strictly
And,
amateurs. Yeah. So
yeah.
they so then I'm looking. So the reason I saw that though is because if you notice at the end of Logan's Run, all of the young people come running out, and they flock down to the old man,
Yeah.
and then they destroy, and be from behind them, what they had, their comforts they had, are all destroyed. So now then what happens is the old man becomes the root of the new society, obviously. I mean, if you follow logic, because he's
Yeah.
the one, he was the one with all the books, and because all these other people knew were pleasure and pain, because some were Sandman and the others were on the circuit. Remember,
Yeah.
if you would jump on the circuit, and then like the main character, Logan, the one who played the Logan 5, you could tell he was a bit of a fruitcake, Michael York. Yeah,
Michael
because
York. Yeah.
if you remember, like when he's back at his pad, like after his daily duties as a Sandman, he's relaxed, and then all of a sudden he issues orders for the circuit, which is to kind of bring a person to you who's put themselves onto the circuit, and then it's a dude, and he's looking
That's
at
right.
me. Like, he doesn't give him like this, like, no, get out of here, man. I don't, he's like, oh, I wish I could, but I'm doing a movie. Next, then the chick, it was like it was like it wasn't. I wasn't really convinced with the look.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah,
right. You're right there. I do recall that now. Yeah, but
yeah,
yeah, he
yeah.
did.
It was funny. I
Very
thought,
effeminate. Michael York was
yeah,
definitely what we call a masculine actor. He's very English and clipped.
right, yeah,
Um, Quite effeminate, really, I guess.
yeah. So then, I just, yeah, and then, so then, what were we talking about? We took the,
Well, the ruby, in their
oh, well, yeah,
hands, you were
keep that in
moving on.
mind.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
keep that
keep
in
that in
mind.
mind
So,
because we got to head over to the battle. So, anyways, this thing ends. Just know the old man is basically, who is this obvious Satan character, is going to then repopulate, not necessarily through uh, whatever, but just through the ideas he puts out, which are going to be a continuation of the same. All right.
yeah,
So then if you move forward in the timeline, all right, to let's say 2673, that's when the Planet of the Apes actually takes place. So that's when the first craft lands in the lakes up there in uh, by Lake Powell, or at least that
hmm
area. All right. So then now you're looking at whatever that society that was built destroyed itself. Yeah, I mean, you kind of already know that. But then now you're coming into the apes being put into the timeline. Just if you're kind of being super geeky about it.
yeah,
Yeah. So then the Planet of the Apes. Remember, if you jump all the way to the end, because you already kind of know the story. It's this, that, and the other thing. But if you jump all the way to the end of the second part, beneath where they finally see the underground, which is New York,
yeah,
and it's all melted, and and what looks like a bullet is supposed to be a nuclear bomb, which both
yeah,
movies, by the way, were really pushing this nuke bomb idea. And so then what happens is when they blow that up, the character of Charlton Heston, he presses the ruby or the red. It's a ruby color, or it's actually ruby in the script. It's
really.
mentioned as being ruby. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so then and then it's pressed, and of course at the end it says, and the sound had receded into infinite silence. The screen is blank, white and glaring. And then if you go to the 109th page, so 109, we talked about the 19 code before. There's silence, and then the audience, or the hold is this, the silence is held for a moment, and then there is no end titles. There's nothing more. The film itself, destroyed by the atomic catastrophe, is over,
yeah,
and then it fades out. So then that's done. So over, kaput. So then that's why the other movies had to come up with a gimmick, to kind of bring themselves back before that time. So you see that this is specifically talking about, and this was rewritten and revised officially on April 18th of 1969, which I find
well,
interesting. Yeah. And that happens and that happens on the 109th page. And I told you about that 19 code, that metonic cycle, and
Atomic
also the
Cycle.
ruby, or the idea of of wanting. There's no place like home. That idea, the ruby
Yeah,
slippers
exactly.
from
It goes
the
it goes
Wizard
straight
of
into
Oz. Yeah,
the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
right.
yep. Gotcha. I figured that was going to be part of as soon as you mentioned Ruby.
Yeah, yeah. So you have the Wizard of Oz, and you have the idea of slippers, or the idea of button, the idea of the idea of slipper shoes, like
Yep.
moccasins. Now think about this, because the Malibu Creek State Park was supposed to have been the home of the Chumash, Chumash, Chumash Indians. Now keep this in mind, that that's a bunch of horseshit. There's no such group of Indians called the Chumash. The Chumash is literally the Hebrew word for the 5 books. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. It's called the Chumash. So
Really?
it's hidden. Right? They made up some
Gee.
BS. They make up some BS Indian story just to hide the fact that they are saying Chumash. So this place that we're speaking about, that's housing all these movies, that's birthing all these movies on the 34th parallel north, is named after the first 5 books of their so-called Bible, the Chumash.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
notice that mash is, if you take mash apart, that's part of the mash 477th. But then you
Yep.
also have the idea of, within that word, mash is sham, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So you see, so the shams, right? The shams in the word itself, right? So then, but also, so then what? Now that, before we head back into the movies, because I think we're hitting some good points, because just getting to the point to where all these different um, colors, specifically ruby, how it connects to each one of the movies. Like with Logan's Run, when your palm turns ruby, it's time to croak. In
Yeah.
in the
Planet of
Battlestar,
the Apes.
yeah, Planet of the Apes, when the red ruby button is pressed, it ends.
Boom. Yep.
Yeah, in the Wizard of Oz, when the ruby slippers are clicked 3 times, it ends, meaning that she's brought back to her bed,
So
and people think
yeah.
she's nuts,
Yep,
right?
yep. That's
So
that's
then,
and that's another story. It's another. We go off on that one another episode
oh,
about that
oh,
particular film. Yeah,
and then
but no, we'll
also
keep.
we would have to then include Napoleon's favorite, Return to Oz.
That's the one.
He likes to add in the where she's wheeled in and they're putting the headphones on her on the Return to
Yep.
Oz. If you've ever seen that, that's something else. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No.
So
So
then, hmm so then
no, no. Keep
if
going.
you oh, I was going to say, so then if you take Chumash, so the idea of what's the power behind this place? You have the idea of the 5 books. So you have Genesis, which is the origin story, right? Guess what? In Genesis, within the word Genesis, you have seeings, Seeings. So within a Genesis, you also have seeing. So within that word is also seeing. So you're seeing what is becoming, right? So then
So the Indian tribe is Chumash.
Chumash, yeah,
And Mash is called Mash. So there's obviously
yeah,
a link in there.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and uh, the oh yeah, that's what I was saying. If you break that word up
Wow.
into Chumash, yeah, and then
Yeah,
also mash is scam. Is
yeah.
sham is also interesting enough, hatches in there, right?
It is. Yeah. Very
So yeah, so hey, yeah. so
fascinating.
yeah, so man,
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
so Exodus, if you take Exodus, you have douse in that word, douse, right? Now douse is interesting in that it can be like the idea of liberation. If you douse something that's burning, you douse it and it
Yes.
goes out. So you're taking heat away, or you're doing something. Or you can take something, or even if it's something, you're dousing it and then you
To
pull it
find
out.
water.
And,
To
yeah,
find
and
water. Yeah.
you're dowsing. So then it's the idea of liberation, and within sailing, it's meaning to lower a sail. So if you're sailing on a
Douse.
boat, so you're dowsing the sail. So that means that you're trying not to take you're not or there's an effect that's happening that you don't want any part of. There's a wind that you don't need at the moment, so you douse your sail because you
Mm,
don't want that momentum. That's the idea of exodus. You're moving, you're getting out, right? But
yeah, yeah,
you're controlling your either descent or ascent, depending on how you're looking at it, by by your sail, and that idea. Now Leviticus, where it's up to the third, is the idea of like, now this is where most people get confused because it's like to elicit. Within Leviticus is to elicit, to bring up. Now this is not for the average so-called man who is living and just producing and being and not lying to their neighbor. This is for those that think that they're priestly or lawyers, because they're the ones who are going to go into this idea of eliciting uh, thoughts or meaning from simple words. So these are the litigious folks as well. These are what this is. This is the book that causes or speaks about who becomes, in the modern day lingo, as lawyers.
yeah.
Pains in the ass. All right. So then Numbers. Isn't that interesting that the fourth book is called
There's numbers,
Numbers,
the
and people
door.
want to talk about numbers as not meaning anything. Within numbers, you can say submen, like submen, meaning subhuman,
Yeah,
because by the numbers, that's also there's it's stories of being in the wilderness or of challenge. That's what that book's about. All
yeah.
right. So then you have the idea of Deuteronomy, and there's a few interesting things in here. One, you have demon, which is obvious. You have moon eye. Moon eye is the idea of the dark eye, right, or the evil eye. And
And
then you
money.
have, yeah, then you have, and that's the idea. And Deuteronomy is the idea of the covenant. Now, the covenant is the idea of who do you covet? What do you covet? What power do you covet? What idea or truth do you covet? What are you going to what are you going to go to bat for?
Yeah,
What's your thing? Right. So then those of and then MASH goes into uh, rebellion within a system, while trying to highlight that those rebels can still be useful when called upon. And to say simply, it means that BJ and Honeycutt, and they can go sit in their tent in the swamp and be pains in the ass and break all the different rules, but when it came time for the job to be done, they could be
they did it.
counted on.
Yeah,
Therefore, it was allowable that they break the rules, or that's allowable that they be rebels, because their work was such that, no, it's all
got
horseshit. That's not how it works. Let me tell you what. That's not how that works. Yeah. So then what it does is it puts these false ideas out, though, to children or to anyone really, because the child could be 40 years old. A
yeah,
child could be
yeah,
50 years old. It's
yeah,
where their mind's at, man. Most people have no original thought. So these people's minds then see this stuff and they think that's how it is, and that's not how it is. So it
yeah,
basically offers a false product too. And then that is the idea of false mind. Or remember in like the Harry Potter movies, or in the books, they have the pensive, which is the idea of memories that you could put into a container, and you could pull out the pensive, you could pull out a memory. The
yeah,
idea of a seven, the idea, so then you're able to then relive this idea of this memory.
yeah,
Right now, the Chumash, which if you look at another word in there, you have chasm, which is the gap or an opening. Right now, the gap or the opening is the place where you can put something. It's a place. Remember in Planet of the Apes, how the apes found out where they were hiding was they said, "Oh, look, there's a gap. There's a crevice." Remember, they went into the gap
yes,
specifically to so then the gaps, that opening talked about, it's in Chumash. That same idea, and also is Muska. Now, Muska is the idea of a star name. All right, and it's named after a fly. However, it was named before after the bee, and it was named Apis, Apis. What's interesting about that is that what makes this interesting is that you'll notice that the bee, think of it like a beehive, represents, if you look at the honeycomb
The shape.
shape, it's going to
Yeah,
represent the inside of your hexagram, right?
that's right.
Now, what's interesting about your hexagram is that if you just look at it a certain way with your eyes and tell yourself, just break that into two triangles, you see that it's simply just two triangles, and you pull it apart. And then now you have your 33, and you can put it back together. Now you see how the hexagon works. It's actually two
Yeah,
triangles. You just put it right together. Once you
yeah,
see physically how that works and you do it in your imagination, you can pull apart any story because you now have access to that center beehive combo key. And that's what's
yes.
interesting about what was when it was changed to fly, the same place, the same power. It was changed to fly because under B, it's giving you a positive idea of how to use the system. Under fly, its gematria changes to 43, all right, or 7, right? 4 plus
Mhm.
7. And that's also the idea, or is mark, or you have the mark of Cain, right? Or the mark
Mark
of,
of the beast.
and guess what? Well, funny, Diablo is 43. All right. So
Yes,
then also you have the fly, which is Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. Which, if you're out there wanting to read the Bible, Mark 3:22, 322,
we've heard
7.
that number before.
Well,
Yep.
you take a look at that, or Luke 11:15 for starters. There's several more that just go ahead and look it up. But that's a good start. And then that will give you that idea. But then you see, Rick, that there's the idea of the polarity change simply by changing what people will then be told that it's named after, and by changing the name. But the light was not different. However, then that tells you the story of rebellion.
Yeah, well, both those, all the movies that we've discussed are rebellion and
Yeah.
TV shows. So yeah, you're
Mm-hmm.
100% correct as usual.
Mm-hmm.
100% correct as usual. Yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating, very interesting, and very. It's you've got to. I'm glad I'm doing this bit by bit because no one can comprehend this stuff. Well, you put it together, but you need to do it bit by bit to get to put the puzzle together, and then and find out how to untangle the shapes, and as
Right.
you just mentioned, take the hexagon and take the two triangles apart, and you pull apart the story.
Right.
Excellent.
That's your 33. That's your entranceway.
Amen.
You got the key. Remember, you got the key because remember, if you take the Ankh idea, the Ankh is the reflection of the nut because the nut is sometimes shown as draping her arms up and over, but there's
Yeah.
going to be a gap. If you
The
then take,
anchor's a cross with the loop on the top, isn't it?
yes, correct.
Yeah, yeah,
So now imagine, however, imagine that Ankh as the nut goddess, which is just reaching over almost all the way, but leaving a gap. And then once you rotate that in the mirror, that gap is filled with the mirrored image. That becomes the Ankh. That becomes the encapsulated idea or the containment, the six.
the the
Remember in the
mirror of
movie, that was,
illusion.
yeah,
The mirror of
exactly.
illusion. Mm.
Exactly. And exactly. You hold that up to yourself and say, mirror, mirror on the wall. So then
Mm.
if you look at that idea, so remember the key was used, and the key was even used by Francis. Francis. 7. Remember he looked down and he saw it in the puddle and he picked it up. He said, oh, there it is. And then he
Yeah,
used the key. Man, he chased him all the way. And then the little old man Satan character didn't lift a finger, didn't care. He let it all play out.
yeah.
So then, yeah, and then, so I find that interesting that those movies all there, and even you have uh, the battle for the Planet of the Apes filmed some of it there, and that was filmed in 70, or that was released in 73, and that dealt more with the idea of that was I want to say the fifth movie, and that dealt more with the idea of when the apes were fighting back with mankind again, which is
Which was beneath
strange.
the which was beneath the Planet of the Apes. Which
That was
number was that?
number two. That was that
Two.
was
Okay.
that came out in 1970.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that was the one that I told you that had the ones that the characters would speak to them with their minds only.
These were massive movies too in the day. I've got to reiterate, as a child, they were must-see movies,
Yeah.
incredibly big. Well,
And,
all the stuff we're talking about was big.
yeah, and remember when they were worshiping the idea of uh, the the nuclear bomb when they
Bomb.
took
Yeah.
off their masks,
Yeah.
and they had those little veiny faces like D heads.
Yeah.
And here's what's interesting about that is that even back then, that's life. It was representing the idea of life-like masks that's being talked about today. That's
Yeah.
obvious in
Big time.
some. That's obvious in some cases because none of the characters, and in fact, I would say none of the audience to that point expected that.
Mm-mm.
Had you not seen it already.
Yeah.
And so I found that an interesting dynamic, and because there wasn't a lot of story to be told for those characters, so they kind of had to add something, and that was pretty good to add. It kind of gave a little bit more depth to the character, other than just a bunch of bunglers that at the end just drank some poison and off themselves. And do you remember that's kind of how they did? They off themselves basically, and then the monkeys came in, the gorillas specifically, because you notice with the Planet of the Apes, the gorillas were the army, the chimpanzees were like the general work class, and then the orangutans were the aristocrats. All right.
Yeah. Orange. The orange.
Yeah, they were the
orangutan.
aristocrats, and then
Aristocrats.
the aristocrats. The aristocrats, however, and then there was no crossing. There was no chimpanzee who was being brought under the wing of a gorilla to be a good. No, that wasn't happening. So then you notice that when the gorillas come into there with Dr. Zayas, because
Dr. Zayas. Dr. Zayas. Yeah.
Dr. Zayas,
Dr.
he's
Zayas.
part of the. So he goes in, and then remember the blonde, one of the blonde characters from the little tribunal that was putting the astronaut on trial had this long fake blonde hair. You already knew it was fake because you already saw it was a mask as the audience, but the monkey comes in and doesn't know, and he's playing with it, and you see this kind of, they play it off like there's some the desire there. It's kind of a strange scene, quite obviously. And then then he has to be called off. So it's a specific scene. It's done for a reason. It's not done for no reason. So I found that interesting as well, because a lot, like I say, most of these movies you can break down to, you could probably do them in 40 minutes, but there's a lot of filler. But
Well,
that's what fast forward buttons for.
Yeah, that's what, as you say, a movie could be cut by three quarters in some cases.
Yeah, just to get to the point. So yeah, so I think that's
awesome
pretty cool,
time.
man.
Yeah, I'm impressed as usual.
Yeah, so we were basically looking at the idea of going to a place called Malibu Creek State Park, find out that
the 34th parallel.
Yeah, and found out that it's named that basically the people who were supposed to have been there first, or native, the native people were the Chumash, meaning that the 5 books or the people of the law were the first people there. You see that that's just a sneaky way of saying that they were there first.
And they named
it's
that
all
show
tribal
MASH,
nonsense.
and they named the show MASH as well. You know,
Oh
so
yeah,
there's a big there
yeah.
with that for sure.
Oh, for
Absolutely
sure.
fascinating, Dave. Absolutely fascinating. I don't know where you want to go now. I mean, you've really done a big job on that region for sure.
Oh yeah, so
So
that's just really kind of the area, and then even once you get outside of that area, you kind of have the Mulholland Drive, which starts there by where does it start? Down there by
David Lynch just happens
yeah,
to have done a very powerful film called
yeah.
Mulholland Drive as well. Another guy who's done some amazing stuff as well. We'll have to do a bit of a breakdown on some of the his shows as well eventually.
Yeah, I can go anywhere with that. That's
Yeah,
fine.
well,
I
that'll
can
be
go anywhere with
fascinating.
that.
We'll save maybe next week. We'll do David Lynch's incredible. I mean, really, there's a couple of shows just in his shows alone. Probably 3 shows you could do. What was the first show with Laura? You know
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. Yeah, absolutely. So we do it. I would say do a Twin Peaks and then follow through to Mulholland Drive and
Well,
all the
yeah,
other spin-offs.
yeah. So Mulholland, yeah, that starts there in Leo Carrillo. I want to say it starts right off the PCH at Leo Carrillo Beach, and then it winds all the way up and it crisscrosses. And I want to say it interjects with the 23 for a minute. Then it keeps going. It winds up all the way up there by the Hollywood sign
Wow,
by the time it's all said and done. So if you were to
fascinating.
drive from Leo Carrillo Beach on the
Yeah,
PCH, it's called Pacific Coast Highway. It's Highway 1, but if you're in California, just ask where's the PCH. That's all you need to know. And then say, okay, so you're going up the PCH, get onto Mulholland. If you take that joker all the way through, and it's going to be some sort of trip for you, you'll wind up at the Hollywood sign or very close to it.
very interesting.
Yep. So that's a very interesting little trip. And that whole just the roads, Canaan Road is the road that I used to take. In fact, I had a job. My first job after my paper out was I worked at 15 when I was 15 and a half, they hired me at Jack in the Box. And it was the last Jack in the Box on Canaan Road before if you were going to Malibu Beach or if you were going to Zuma Beach, you'd be coming through my drive-through. It
Fascinating.
was a pretty good job for a high schooler.
Oh man, so you had your driver's license, obviously, or were you riding a motorbike?
I had a little scooter. I had what was called an Elite 80. It was a little
Yeah,
Honda, one of those things where you kind of sit stupidly like you're sitting on a bench.
I know the ones. Oh yeah, I know the ones. Yeah,
That was my first one. Then I moved to I had a Honda XL 250, which was
I know the
an
bike,
X.
man. Fantastic,
Yeah,
great bike. Yep.
because I used to ride all over in the dirt. We used to do different dirt bike riding because California is really, when I first grew up, there was a lot of open area, a ton of it. So we used to do YZ80 runs. Back when two stroke, I really liked the two stroke
Why is the
engine.
80s are
Yeah,
incredibly fast
yeah.
for an 80 cc 33 80
Oh
cc
yeah,
33 yeah. Those bikes had what they called the power
yeah.
band or whatever. So you'd open it up and it'd boost more.
Wah, wah.
Absolutely,
Oh,
yeah.
and
And there
you're
was
thinking,
the Suzuki RM, the Suzuki. Oh yeah, they had the power band. Whatever that technology was, that bike went faster than what you were supposed to go on a little tiny bike. Incredible stuff.
yeah, I used to do a few tricks. I'd never do them if somebody's riding behind me, but I used to like to when I was coming up a berm. If I was coming up a berm, I'd go ahead and bounce the pegs, and then
Yeah,
I'd make the back tire bite, bite, bounce, bounce, bite, bite,
I know.
and then
Yeah,
yeah, and just bring it around, and then I'd shoot off into the straightaway.
oh yeah.
It would allow me to get a little extra speed. I like to do little tricks, but the reason I didn't do it if somebody's behind me is because you might kick up something right into their grill, you
In
know.
their face. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't want to do that.
We
That would
obviously
be
had very similar.
uncool.
We had similar childhoods. We were or teenhoods because those bikes were part of my growing up and zooming around and having some great fun. Very
Yes,
dangerous, but no one got killed.
I
Yeah.
had the XL, and then that was it. Well, actually, my I left because I went into the Navy when I was 17. Like pretty the day I was turned 17, I went in. So I only
Wow.
had the XL for about a year because I had the Elite 80 for 6 months or so. Yeah, for the time I worked at the Jack in the Box, and then I moved to Vaughn's, which was a market, which is kind of like a supermarket. I moved to Vaughn's, and I even went to bagging college for 2 days.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and yeah, I went down. I went down to L.A. Well, in town L.A. They sent me down to a Vaughn's in L.A. And so it was right next to the Anheuser Busch factory, which makes beer at the time.
Great.
But they also had an amusement park there, which was pretty cool. Which they had a beer
Awesome.
garden and an amusement park. They've gotten rid of it, but back when I was a kid, that was the place to be. That was fun between Knott's Berry Farm, Disneyland, and Busch Gardens. Maybe we'll do something
Yeah,
on that
man.
place.
Especially
Busch,
Knott's Berry Farm. Knott's Berry
yeah,
Farm, fascinating.
Knott's Berry Farm is cool. So yeah, so then yes, I went to bagging college for 2 days, and then that's why I'm an expert. I tell you what, paper or plastic, because at the time when I first started, it was only paper. We only had paper sacks. Then they started to have a choice. So then you ask them the choice. You put the frozen into the one, boom, boom, boom. You make sure they're square. You pop them in their cart. If they need
Yeah.
help, you walk them out. Oh yeah, I was good at that. It's
Fa-
great. It's working in a
Fantastic, man.
market's great because I mean you go on a break, you get hungry. There's plenty of stuff to choose from.
And you get free
Yeah,
food
yeah,
often. Free food. Why
yeah.
not?
So especially when they slightly burn the cookies, they give those away.
Well, and they taste just as good, let me just tell
Oh,
you now.
absolutely. I would always eat them. I'd be like, I'll take a few for sure. I'll take a
Yeah,
few.
man.
Yeah, man. So I think we're pretty good. So next week
I think so.
we'll head up Mulholland. We can kind of work backwards because you have Mulholland is like I guess he did that in 2001, huh? And
That
then
was it. Yep, yep.
yeah, so then yeah, well we can do his other thing too, Twin Peaks. Well, Twin Peaks goes into a bunch of different stuff. Twin Peaks goes into all kinds of different, as you know, it's all
Oh
biblically
man, it's
referenced, but I'll get
very much
into it.
so.
And a
Very
lot of
much
it's
so.
dreams. A lot of it's dreams that people don't realize. That a lot of what you're looking at is dream sequence.
Illusion. It's all
Yeah,
illusions, and
yeah,
yeah, you got to know what you're looking at. But yeah, no, we'll do that. I would say, very importantly, because there's so much in it. Maybe one series at a time, and
right.
mix it up with something else because it's very convoluted, but some incredible stuff. David Lynch is a very clever fellow, I would have to say that, because he's done some quite interesting films. The normie type person would enjoy it as well, but if you've got an esoteric bent to your brain and you can see the behind the scenes and the illusions that you're being presented, and how to take them. So it's fascinating. Well, I don't know what you want to do, Dave. You want to talk about some? Have you picked up any interesting
Oh,
smokes in the last 7 days
yeah.
since I spoke to you?
I
Yeah.
have actually. I just picked up one called Jelly Runts. Now
How do
this,
you jelly runts?
yeah,
Jelly runts.
Runtz. So like jelly, almost like jam or jelly, and
Yeah.
Jelly Runts. So it's
Nice.
I had a nice big toke of it earlier. It gives you a little bit of dry mouth, slightly. So you definitely have to have your sweet tea ready. And usually that means that it's going to be more on the happier, like it makes you talkative for sure. Because the reason you get dry mouth is because you're running your mouth too much.
Mm,
Take a
yep.
break, sport. That's what it's telling you. It's trying to tell you you're running your mouth too much, sport. So yeah. So this is it's now it's saying that it is a cross from white runts to jelly. The thing is, they got these things so screwed up now that it smells to me what used to be called gelato. All right, that's what it smells like. It used to be called gelato, and then but these people have the names so messed up nowadays that it's hard to talk to you about like what kind of like the original strain names with the newer stuff because they're so far removed. So I kind of sometimes will say if this is white runts, like, it smells like gelato to me, and it is quite frosty. Now, frosty is when you have a lot of the THC crystals on the end of the bud, and it looks very, lots of bling to it. Lots of bouncy bling
Hmm.
to it. And also, when you look under the scope, and that's what you need to look at. That's the medicine you're burning. That's actually what you're ingesting that gives you the effect. You
What are
know,
the shape of the crystals, Dave?
oh, they look like a ball with a one on them, like a one with a ball sitting on top. They're called
Yeah,
trichomes, by the way.
yeah, trichomes.
Trichomes. Isn't that interesting? Try three.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So then, let me tell you, just so since we brought it up, the trichome. Just this is my rule of thumb: is that if I take my sight glass, which you can get off the internet for a few bucks with a light, a little magnifying light, just put it on the bottom of your bud if you're growing. Put it on the bottom of your bud, and if about 40% of your field of view without moving the scope, where your trichomes are amber color, kind of the
Yeah,
same color as Jurassic Park when they had the mosquito in it. Remember that color? So
amber, yeah.
yeah, so when you see that color, that's when it's time to cut it down. Because if your trichomes are still standing straight up with the ball on top, they're still young, obviously. If you get the idea. Once they start to droop over and they start to become like they're at 90 degrees or almost look like a seven shape, guess what? It's time to chop it down.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's specific, and you notice how even in the so-called physical space, those same ideas are shown. The seven, the seven, even in the shape of the trichome, it's going to present itself in the shape of what's going to happen. The seven, or the Zion, or the mind. What's going to be
Mm.
affected? Do you see?
Oh, it's just everywhere, isn't it? These numbers.
Yeah. Well, it's just if you know that the system's not going to change, and you recognize what builds the system and how to recognize the parts, you can't not see it. You have to see it. So then you're like, okay, that's the same, that's the same, that's the same. It's just like taking that hexagram apart. Once you know how to pull the puzzle apart, and you can see it's you. Once you know the trick, it's no longer tricky to you. You're like, oh, here you go, boom, boom, boom. Here's how you do it. So you see, so you've
Yeah,
already broken the system. Now you know how to. Now you just need to start to manipulate it. You manipulate
yeah,
the system, and you show people, hey, if I show you this, and this result happens, then go ahead and take a look what I've told you and test it to see if it's true. All right? Because I've told you before that a person will not come to their senses unless they, one, get called by my Lord Jesus Christ. That's that's not out of my hands. But two, that they listen and that they actually answer the door. They've got to answer to the knock. Because if they just refuse and they just continue to think that they've got it all figured out, then they'll continually be in the dark and seeing things darkly. They'll kind of know things aren't right, but they won't know why. I know because I was there. You can
yeah,
see clearly. You can know. All right.
yeah.
There's a there's a
Fantastic.
there's a there's a Mark Wahlberg movie. What is he in? Where he plays like a time traveler of
Mm,
sorts, and it came
mm,
out. Uh, let me tell you the story why I figure out the name. But he plays a character that forgot his past. All right. So then they're trying to get him to remember uh, who he was, and he had to be. So they're and he's protecting this egg, and this egg, if activated, will end the world. All right. So you have these two sides. It's like good and evil. Let's just call them. They call them in. Is it no? Is it Invincibles? No. Da, 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 da. Shoot, I don't like when I can't remember the name of something, but it's mm, 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 mm. Anyways, they continue through each life and each life. Some of them can remember who they were before, like
is it infinite?
specifically.
Is it infinite?
It might be infinite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Infinites. Yeah. Okay. So then they'll remember who they were. What's happened with the Wahlberg characters, he doesn't remember who he is.
Yeah.
Right. And then, what happens is they have to then go through these procedures to have him remember who he is, blah, blah, blah. And I guess what the point of, that whole story is.
A man discovers that his hallucinations are actually visions from past
Yeah.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Right.
then if
2021.
yeah,
2021.
if you watch that, the scene where he's trying to be convinced or where he's trying to have his memory jogged, every time he says he doesn't know, the guy pulls a trigger on a gun. So
Yeah.
see, I don't know is not the answer. And wait till you see that scene. So that and
We
then,
brought this. We brought this.
yeah,
I don't know. Up back in the very early episodes of
yeah,
Bongversations. I think the
yeah,
episode 1. I do
uh,
believe. I think I
yeah.
don't know was part of the takeaway of that show.
Yeah, it's basically it's a mantra that you convince yourself of a mind state. It's
Yeah.
like if you can't know, then how will your mind, your so-called subconscious, ever be relaxed on a
Yeah.
truth or a foundation? Because you've told yourself and you convinced yourself that you don't know. You've literally you fooled
Yeah.
yourself. You bewitched yourself.
Yep.
And that's why in the scripture Paul asks, "Who bewitched you?" You know, it's like, who bewitched you? You walk into a town and these people are talking crazy about, they don't know this and they don't know that. It's like, who bewitched you? How did you not? How did you think that you're here and that you have no ability to know? What is wrong with you? You know?
Exactly.
And that's the
Fascinating.
idea. That's the idea of becoming the man. Also, so yeah, I did want to say that the idea of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid was also filmed partially in that Malibu Creek State Park, and we talked about that in one of the early episodes.
We did, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And you can see, like, after when you started going through all the shows that you said were filmed there, I was going, yeah, it's just very similar, same locations
yeah,
in, because often the whole film industry is an illusion for sure,
right,
And I spend an awful lot of time on, so for say Dark City and Matrix movies alone, I roamed around the sets and things like that, and you'd find the interesting thing is that Dark City sets were used on the Matrix sets. The film was
mm,
filmed exactly before as soon as they wound up the Dark City, the Matrix started, and all of the sets of that were reused for the Matrix. So Dark City, they're a lot more closer than you would imagine. I can kind of see, as you did. I guess there's a bit of a link between me and you. You grew up around these areas where you could see this is an
mm-hmm,
illusion, that there wasn't really planets, there wasn't really apes roaming
right,
around here. And 30 years ago, I was saying the same thing. That's from that film. That's from that film. They're not real. But
right,
there's a lesson to be learned in that film. So yeah, fascinating, man, and good stuff, Dave. As usual, I think we'll probably wind it up now because I think we've knocked out probably more
for sure.
as per usual. And as again, once again, I've sat here listening to you and going, wow, this is good stuff. No one has done any of this stuff before, Dave. And if they have, I haven't heard it. I'd like someone to point me to a direction of someone that's broken down these shows and bringing links. The Chumash and Mash, the Rubies,
Right.
and the 3 movies, TV shows we talked about with the Ruby in it. Fascinating. And I think, on this wonderful, beautiful Sunday, and I think you'd probably be getting into the 3:11 yourself, or 11:3 now, but getting a bit late over
I'm
there.
still no, I'm still a little ways away.
Okay, man. Well, that's fantastic. Well, I
I'm still
I'm gonna
traveling on the backside.
I, I'm going to end the show when I'll send it to Joel from the truth. We're on truthmeets.com. The full finished article is truthmeets.com,
Right.
where you can find all these shows. Dave will put it out on YouTube, which has got, we can't put music on either of on any
No.
platform because it gets stopped. So if you want to listen to the final result, it's truthmeets.com. Go into the site and you'll find the finished product, the product, thanks to Joel, the wonderful producer in the background, back in the ether out there somewhere. So I'm
Hmm.
going to end as a song, "The Mirror of Illusion," which is a fantastic song by Hawkwind from '72 or '73. But if
Hmm.
you listen to the lyrics, there's a whole lot of stuff that Dave's kind of knocked out tonight is in
Nice.
those lyrics. So, "The Mirror of Illusion." Dave, you want to send the bot out, and
I will.
we'll have a little chin wag